Hey everybody, welcome back to Tech Talk Thursday. I'm Leanne with the Brookfield Group. Today we are here with Husky Dog owner and network engineer Cameron.
Hello, how are you?
So today we're going to talk about 5G and Wi-Fi 6, which both of them I know absolutely nothing about other than my phone is a 5G and that's about it. So brought in the brains here, and Chris, the voice in the sky, knows a whole lot about it. So I'll just be nodding my head a lot and acting like I know what they're talking about. So let's start off with what is 5G?
Okay, so after a little bit of research, more than we know about the 5G phones, 5G, the three key factors of 5G is the high bandwidth. So like, for example, high bandwidth means in 4G LTE networks, the max speed you could have gotten out of that, and then was like 200 meg per second.
Okay.
Which is like an average at-home Wi-Fi speed, 200 meg down and up. But 5G introduces the new 1 gigabit, gigabyte, however you want to look at it, per second. So about 5 times the speed of 4G.
Okay, so 1G actually started in the 80s, and then 2Gs was in the 90s. 3G, which I don't even remember 3G, was in the 2000s. And then the 4Gs were in the 2010s, so now we're up to the 5Gs. So what is the deal that all the airlines are going crazy about?
So the big deal about airlines right now are the interference with the plane's equipment. Okay. So like the altimeter, the communication systems to the towers, and other sensors that airplanes have. So with 5G, the bands that it lands in, that regulated by the FAA, they start, they say that they could possibly start interfering with those bands that the equipment is on. As you can see on the webpage that voice in the sky has up, when they start putting the towers around the airports, that's when they were raising an eyebrow about if it's going to start interfering with the equipment.
And so the biggest thing was last week, they introduced, AT&T and Verizon dropped C-band. So there's all these kind of buzzwords. There's 5G, there's ultra wideband, there's millimeter wave, there's C-band, which are basically different radio frequency technologies. And C-band was sold off a little over a year and a half ago to AT&T and Verizon. My understanding, it used to be part of the spectrum where if you see those old satellite dishes that would be in people's yards in like rural areas, like the giant like 10-foot side, it was part of that spectrum. So that got sold off. AT&T and Verizon flipped the switch on that this last week, which gave a lot of customers what I consider quote unquote real 5G. Or I can actually show a little demo if we want to move over to that demo.
We love props.
Boop. Here we go. So this is a video. I'm on Verizon Wireless, and you know that you're kind of in the new C-band space. If you can see at the very top where it says 5G, it now says 5G UW, which stands for ultra wideband. And on different carriers, I think T-Mobile, it says UC next to their 5G if you're in kind of their higher banded sections. So I'll play this little video. This I took at my home on Verizon. I'm running a iPhone 13 Pro. We can see that we're getting almost about 200 megabits per second down. And then the image on the right, as that speed test runs, image on the right, I got 1.8 gigabit down on 5G, literally just on the street. So that's kind of crazy that we're getting these sort of speeds now on 5G. But
Wow.
there you go,
Interesting.
47 up. And Cameron, you said something about how the up speed is still really poor in a lot of places.
Really poor would be an opinion, because back in like 4G days, upload would be like 1 to 10 meg. So when 5G got introduced, you see the 1.8 gig download, but you only get about 4750 meg up, which is actually really good for mobile devices when you're driving or just out and about in the city. If you want to get the true like 1.8 up and down, you'd be right next to the towers of 5G, which are actually called small cells. They actually, if you've ever seen like the big cell towers while you're driving around the road, they're huge, middle of cornfields. Small cells are actually lower to the ground, so on light poles. That's where they usually mount them, is on light poles. And they look like, I don't even know how to explain them, just like rectangles hanging off the the light towers.
I thought those were like solar panels for traffic cams. So
Those are
those
5G.
are, oh, well, look at that. I learned something today.
Usually in like downtown areas is where you see them the most, and the light towers. Yep, exactly like that.
Bring up a picture here of everybody see what we'll do.
I point to a TV that no one can see.
Nobody can see. There we go. That's what they look like.
Yep, I have seen those. Interesting. So you were telling us earlier that there's a couple of cities in California that have banned 5G.
Yes, 2 cities in the northern part, I believe they're northern part of California, San Anselmo and Mill Valley, California. They banned 5G in those cities due to health concerns. And health concerns is another fragile topic with the topic of 5G. That people say there's no scientific evidence proving this, by the way, that causes radiation to human cells.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
what do you think?
I don't believe it at all, because when things start interfering with human anatomy, they say the radio waves. So X-ray machines, gamma rays, or cosmic radiation. That's when you start getting the issues with human body.
Like Incredible Hulk gamma
Yeah,
rays? Okay.
yeah,
All right, just
exactly.
making sure.
You're not going to turn into Hulk with 5G.
All right, I'm going to be on my
Unfortunately.
phone, and somebody's going to make me angry, and then all of a sudden I'm
Yeah.
just going to like
Yeah.
turn into the Hulk. All right, good to know. Good to know. Huh? I would think like health concern would be like if I had a pacemaker or something, and
No.
that would be. So wow, that's interesting. Well, they must have some kind of data to back that up to be able to ban it, I would think. But
There's actually no scientific evidence to prove that it causes issues. So
This kind of reminds me of early cell phone days where there was all that research and lawsuits that, holding this device up to your head is causing brain cancer. And I think the same, like the no scientific findings, everything kind of petered out. It was never really proven or disproven or anything like that.
my mother believed that, so she's like, "Quit holding that phone up to your ear." I was like, "How else am I going to talk on it?" She also thought that if you had an earache, if you held a hot rock up to your ear, it would make your earache go away. So,
oh, really?
Guess
I've never tried that.
Okay, don't.
Don't do that? Okay.
It's supposed to like pull the moisture out of your ear or something. I don't know. She had a million of those things.
I've heard of the candle. Like you lay on your side. You get
Oh
a
yeah,
hot
that's
candle.
that hot. What's that called? It's like some kind of wax that goes in there, and then you turn your head and it all come. Yeah, I don't think so. But if you want to try it, I'll light it for you.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Dang it.
That's going to be on next week's live.
Yes.
Yeah. Experiments on each other now.
Okay. Any more on 5G? Going once?
I mean, the future, I would say the future use cases, the current use cases are mainly cell phones, like 5G, LTE, cell phones, the newer ones. But then in the future, you start digging into more mobile or more devices that have to communicate with each other. So, for example, I think the biggest one will be medical equipment or autonomous cars.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I don't know if Teslas use 5G. I don't believe they do. They use some type of satellite. But, for example, like the Tesla cars talk to each other about traffic conditions or how to take a turn on the road. I think 5G is going to start dabbling into that more. And I think the biggest at-home use right now is by Verizon because they actually have 5G home internet. You have it looks like a little mobile hotspot that you used to carry around with you all the time before hotspots were built into a phone, and you would actually connect to that, which connects to 5G. That's how you get higher download speeds at home. It's in limited areas right now, but
Yeah, I was going to say, I wish AT&T would get that because that's what we're on. We're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So that would be nice.
But I think Verizon is the only one that has it, I believe, right now at home.
I think T-Mobile is also rolling out at home 5G.
Yeah, they're usually pretty quick adopters of early technology. So, Chris, do we have anyone watching that turned in any questions?
No, but I do have something on the future of 5G.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
But like you were saying, you kind of live out in a rural part of the city, so you may only have one. I think you do have one option for an ISP. I think 5G, hopefully, cross your fingers, will help sort of flatten the playing field of a lot of these places that are monopolized ISP carriers. So instead of at home, you only have one choice, right? You could say, well, now 5G, you've got a competitive choice, so that will hopefully, one, make networks improve their service, and two, lower prices for consumers.
Interesting. We'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting what they do with that, and especially in like your type of areas. Because I don't know what type of internet you have at home, but there's a lot of in rural areas like point to point, which is terrible in a lot of
ours is
situations. Especially with terrible weather. When you start getting rain, you lose internet.
Or the squirrel eats through there. There's only like the hub is in town, and so when you call them, they're like, "Oh, squirrel must have eaten through the wires again." I'm like, "Good grief, where do I live?"
Yeah.
Or our neighbor can't even get on the Wi-Fi because all of the ports are taken.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they have to use satellite for theirs.
Jeez.
It's crazy, right? So, okay, 5G going once, twice. I need my bell, Chris.
Wait.
Ding.
Oh.
He banned the bell from last time.
He did.
Hold on.
He didn't like it.
Hold on.
Come on,
Where is
sound,
it?
come on.
There it is.
Awesome.
There it is.
Okay, moving on to Wi-Fi 6. I know nothing about this, so Cameron.
So this is dabbling a little bit more into what I know more.
Excellent.
Wi-Fi 6 was introduced back in 2019. So it's only about 3 years old. It's still in the infant ages of it. That they tried, the biggest thing about Wi-Fi 6 is the higher density, higher performance.
Okay.
With Wi-Fi 5, which came out, when was that? I believe 2016 area, 2015 possibly. But Wi-Fi 6 is the successor to that. So Wi-Fi 5, FAA 2-3 years ago redid the naming scheme of Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi 5 here, the biggest part was it can only handle one, they call it spatial stream, but in normal, non-nerdy terms of that. So a spatial stream is like the Wi-Fi router to a client, and when a client wants to talk, that's a spatial stream.
Okay.
So Wi-Fi 5 can only handle one at a time, but it does that very, very quickly. Wi-Fi 6AX or 802.11ax, introduces the Wi-Fi router being able to talk to more devices at the same time.
Okay.
And that's where you get the higher density, higher performance.
So is Wi-Fi 6 back in the spotlight more now because of 5G?
So I would say Wi-Fi 6 and 5G, they complement each other, but they don't require each other.
Okay.
Wi-Fi 6 is more in smaller areas, home, apartment buildings, offices. 5G is more broad, more mobile friendly. Out on the road, walking through the city, that won't be Wi-Fi 6.
Are most of our clients on Wi-Fi 6?
We're trying to get there. If we can get access points in, that would be lovely. But a lot of them are on Wi-Fi 5 Wave 2. There's actually 2 waves of Wi-Fi 5. The Wi-Fi, I mean, we don't have to dig too much into it, but Wi-Fi 5 Wave 1 could only handle the single user. More technical details, but Wi-Fi 5 Wave 2 can handle multi-users.
Okay.
There's more that goes into that. We can explain it more later, but Wi-Fi 6 uses that same technology, the multi-user, but then expands on what you saw in that GIF or that little video icon. It can do multiple streams at one time.
So is this Wi-Fi 6 Wave 1?
I don't think there's going to be multiple waves. They'll just start expanding on it.
Okay.
I think I can't remember what we were talking about. I think in a previous Tech Talk Live, we were talking about individuals and how now, in the early days of, business networking, you may have walked in with a laptop, but now you walk in and your phone's connected and your watch is connected and your iPad is connected and your computer is connected. So then now that one quote unquote client is 5 devices deep when you walk into a network. And I think 6 is definitely going to help alleviate some of that burden of so many of these like small devices that are on the network at the same time.
And in that picture, OFDMA, yep, that's like the biggest part of Wi-Fi 6 was the OFDMA, in which OFDMA, and very quick explanation, just does lower latency to multiple devices more efficiently.
Question from the chat: when do you think schools are going to go Wi-Fi 6? From Tammy.
Schools Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi 6 is newer. Access points are more expensive, but schools need a lot of them. So when Wi-Fi 6, I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, when a lot of schools go 1-to-1 with Wi-Fi 6.
Who, from a business perspective, is adopting Wi-Fi 6 now? Who are the early adopters?
The early adopters, as in like buying the equipment or just selling the equipment?
Buying the equipment.
Buying the equipment. I think the biggest buyers right now are businesses, small businesses. Like we have Wi-Fi 6. We're at, there's actually a school, brand new school. They built a new elementary that has Wi-Fi 6 APs. But businesses and small businesses have the most, I would say.
Do we have the equipment in right now if somebody were to contact us and say, hey, we want Wi-Fi 6 now?
No, we don't.
Is it because of supply chain?
Yeah, the supply chain issues, yep.
How far out are we looking, do you know?
They say March or April this year.
So that's not too far out.
But biggest one is, to explain the issue the best, is we had a client last May order Wi-Fi 6 APs. They still haven't gotten them.
Oh.
So they're very hard to get at the moment.
That's a drag. So can you do Wi-Fi 6 at residence?
Yes. So Wi-Fi 6, if we can pull up a picture of those access points, they're starting to introduce that more into home, residential areas.
I think we could use that at our house because every time our internet starts running slow and we call AT&T, they're like, you have 46 devices on your internet. And we're like, what? Because we both have watches. We both have phones. I have 2 phones. We have Alexas everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The biggest thing is that if you want to upgrade at home Wi-Fi, I would start at the router because the devices, the handheld clients need to support Wi-Fi 6 first. The latest iPhones, or just phones in general, the latest ones, do support it. And some of them even support Wi-Fi 6E. So there's if you want to call that the Wave 2, 6E, you could call that the Wave 2. The phones have to support that. The laptops have to support it. The watches have to support it. iPads, etc. But Wi-Fi 6 routers are backwards compatible to older devices.
My next question.
Yep. So if you upgrade that, older devices will work. But if you don't upgrade that first, then it's kind of a waste of money if you don't get the router first.
Chris, do you have anything to add on that?
Cameron, you have this graphic. Do you want to?
So this is the bands of Wi-Fi, if you want to call it that. So before Wi-Fi 6, there was Wi-Fi bands 2.4 and band 5, and you can see those channels here. And that the channels are where clients talk to the access point. So there's the 20 megahertz channel, the 40, 80, 160, and there's sub channels within those that you connect on. So for example, actually those 2.4s aren't all there, 1 and 3. But for example, a client could connect in the 20 megahertz band and then something else could connect in the 40 megahertz band, and they would not interfere with each other. Once you start growing environments like in an office, a school, that gets very complicated not to interfere with each other in certain areas. So 5 gigahertz introduced more bands, more channels. Just more channels, not bands. So 20, 40, 80, and the new 160. And then we'd come down to 6 gigahertz. It doubles those channels for less interference with all the more IoT devices, the phones, the laptops, iPads, watches, light bulbs. Once you start introducing all of those before Wi-Fi 6, you can start getting interference. And that's one of the problems Wi-Fi 6 tries to solve.
So here's a question that kind of goes back to 5G. Is 5 gigahertz spectrum related to 5G? Or I don't know the answer to this. So Cameron, if you don't know the answer to this, I have no idea either.
It's fine. So 5G, trying to think of the best way to explain this. It doesn't use the same bands as Wi-Fi because that would cause issues at home if you don't have Wi-Fi on your phone. You start interfering with 5G externally to the other world. So 5G actually uses the sub 6 band from 600 megahertz to 6 gigahertz is the bands that it uses.
So just like a completely different part of the spectrum.
Correct. The numbers don't match, which makes my eyes twitch, but
yeah.
But it is what it is.
One cool recommendation that I found is a video from, and we'll put this in the description below so you can watch this. It's from a really cool YouTube channel called Wendover Productions. And they just came out with a video basically explaining cellular service and kind of going through, waves and how they translate to binary and kind of the history of, as the ever-expanding cell network. Talking about, point-to-point microwave, towers hidden in trees, apparently. But it's a really cool kind of deep dive, but easy to understand, how cellular signals get to us and how, there's a lot of binary math, apparently, a lot of negative ones. I didn't know you could do that, but there you go. Yeah.
We have one of those towers hidden in a tree out by our house. And when we first moved out there, I was like, look how tall that tree is. And my husband's like, you're kidding me, right? That's a tower. And I was like, how do I know what's out here? Besides cows, a lot of cows. So 2 things on this one web link that I have about Wi-Fi 6. It says it minimizes conflicts with your neighbors.
Correct.
So why is that?
So it minimizes, back to that channels topic that we were on with that picture. Basically, that is what helps solve the issue. So, for example, if we're on 5 gigahertz, if we completely look away from 6 gigahertz at the moment, 5 gigahertz has the 20, 40, 80, 160. And within those channels, there's sub-channels within those. You can see the little spikes, and that's the sub-channels.
Okay.
So say your neighbor could be on the 40 megahertz channels. If you also connect to 40 megahertz channels, you start interfering. They start talking to each other or start blocking each other's traffic to each other's router. So routers do a thing. They scan the air. And so they can see, oh, this channel's busy with other people. I'm going to put myself on the 80 megahertz channels now so I don't interfere with them. And so if we look down at the 6 gigahertz now, it now doubles those channels for less interference. And 6 gigahertz actually is not introduced in Wi-Fi 6. It's actually introduced in Wi-Fi 6E. So
Wave 2.
Yep, if you want to call it Wave 2, yeah.
I do. I like that.
Okay. So Wi-Fi 6 introduces the behind-the-scenes technology. Then Wi-Fi 6E introduces those new channels.
Interesting. Next thing on here says it reduces power consumption, which...
Correct.
That's a big deal at our house, too. Like, my phone will be fully charged when I leave here. When I get home, my battery just starts going, eek.
Yes. So Wi-Fi 6 and 6E do help with better battery life. And that behind-the-scenes technology I was talking about is called Target Wake Time, or TWT, is what they abbreviate that to, in which that does, the router schedules a time with your device to talk to each other. Oh. So if the router doesn't see any traffic or any requests coming from your laptop, for example, it won't talk to the device at all, which puts the device into a sleep mode, which therefore saves battery.
Ah, awesome.
Yep, there's a target wake time.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Chris, any other questions?
No other questions. I was just thinking about, I don't know, Cameron, if you ever did this in the early days of Wi-Fi, I would run tools that would sniff my network around, so I could, because I had to manually put in the bands on my router.
Really?
It didn't actually automatically dynamically change. I had to go in and say, oh, I need it on, this channel and this power consumption. But
yep, there is routers out there that don't do that scanning, and then there's some that do. Some of it's built into access points, and if you start digging into the enterprise environment, it's on the access point or on a device called a controller. It does that. Or like you say, you have to do it manually at home sometimes. So you have to do scan and say, oh, we have neighbors on the 80 channels or the 160 channels. Well, I don't want to be on that either. So I'm going to put myself on the 20 or 40 channels.
It's bringing back memories of the old CB radio.
Yeah.
Were you born yet?
No, I never used
All
one.
right.
No.
Moving on. Anything else to add, Cameron?
I think the two biggest things with Wi-Fi 6 is the higher security. When nowadays people are worried about security, so Wi-Fi 6E introduces WPA3, which 6E requires WPA3. So WPA3, just an extra, and we don't have to dig into the technical long discussion of it, but just elevates the security between the access point or router at home and the client.
Interesting.
So in public places, like a Starbucks, people go there to work a lot. If Starbucks got to Wi-Fi 6E, the communication between the router and the device is more encrypted.
That sounds like a good thing.
It is a very good thing, yes.
Anything else?
I think the last thing I have on it is the beamforming.
Beamforming.
Yep. So Wi-Fi 5, I believe, or the antennas, if you look at the older routers with a bunch of antennas coming out of it looks like a spider if you flip it upside down. It didn't do a technology now is called beamforming. So the router actually direct its antennas. You won't ever see it. It's built in, and it will form the signal to the device. So say your router is pointing a certain way or sitting on a desk, and you're behind the router in another room. The antennas inside the antennas will actually form the beam to your client directly for better reception. Instead of the old way of doing it, it was just like a broad, wide open, just blast of Wi-Fi.
Right now it's a laser beam.
Yep.
Goes right there. Interesting stuff today. I did nod a lot and said and
Mhm.
a lot, but I did learn a few things today. I hope everybody else did too. We will be back next Thursday at 2 o'clock for the next Tech Talk Thursday. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Cameron.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris.
Thanks, guys.